Hey, welcome to another episode of Den and Denim. I'm Den. Let's get to it. Den and Denim. Today I want to focus on one of our discussions. We've been reviewing each year of the 501s. We've been talking about the catalogs, and we're going to do a lot more. But this is what I'm really excited about this channel, is building a community. And I want to talk about my own theory about how to break down the LVC catalog and all of the years of Levi's vintage clothing. Particularly the jeans and even the jackets will fit into there, but I break it up into three main categories. This is my own idea. Contradict me if you want. I want to welcome other theories on this. But really, I break everything up into the idea of historic, classic, and retro features. There are some jeans that'll fit wonderfully into each of these, and then there's basic covering of the years. I can say that from the beginning of the company, 1850 or 1873, whichever you want to go with, all the way until the 1930s, you're going to see a lot of historical features. From 1940s, 50s, 60s, you're seeing the bulk of the classic features. Real classic jeans that all of us grew up wanting to have and were really hard to find because they were all collector's items. And then the retro features. The things that they're making in the later years, since the 60s, 70s, 80s, that Levi's Vintage Collection has chosen to remake, even though I wore as a kid. So let's jump into it. Now, I tried to do my best at being chronological with all of these. If you have any discrepancies, let me know. But basically, we have features. We have historical features. And these are things that happen from the beginning of the company all the way until a specific date. And I've tried to post the date that they were replaced. So look, if it says 1890, look to 1889. If it says 1937, look to a pair of 1936 or whatever Levi's Vintage Collection makes before that. The first historical feature I want to talk about, the rivets. The rivets are the most important thing about Levi's and what their patent is about. And the old rivets from everything until 1890 used to say May 20, 1873. Again, that's May 20th, 1873.
Learn it. Know it. Live it.
Thanks, Judge. The rivets used to say that. Now they'll just say LS and Co. SF. These were replaced in 1890. We also have the historic features, the duck and denim patch. Printed on, looks okay. I can say I don't have a pair of these, and I'm in search of them for that historical value. One back pocket. The one back pocket you'll see in the 1890s, everything before, replaced by the 20th century. White Salvage. The white Salvage line is what you're going to see in everything before the 1930s. Before Levi's went to red Salvage. Next, we're getting into suspender buttons. I dig the suspender buttons, and they used to even make them as attachments. That's one of the items I really wish that Levi's Vintage Clothing would remake, is a box of 6 buttons, maybe even 8 if you want a couple extra, to punch into any pair of jeans you want, from 1873s all the way to your modern pairs. Exposed back rivets. Back rivets on the pockets used to be there. They were there around the cinch, and every single one of these is murder on your furniture. The cinch, we'll see a cinch in the 1937 and everything before. It really didn't go away until World War II, and it's one of those historical features that I think everyone should dabble in. The exposed crotch rivet, again, stays until the war. Why we have this at any point in time, I don't know, but I love it. And that's about it for the historical features. The classical features are really those things that I was looking for as a kid. Big E red tab, leather patch, salvage denim, this red line salvage denim. This is what we thought Levi's was historically until we learned about the whole LVC catalog. Now, the first classic feature that appears is really in 1890. We have the rivets changing from the patent date. What's the patent date again? That's right. Until the rivets now say LS and C O, LS and Co SF. That happened in 1890. Also, we have the first two-horse leather patch, so iconic. No two horses can rip this pair of jeans apart because they're so strong. Whatever. It's an icon, it's a logo, and it's really the first logo that Levi's starts to have in it. We're also seeing 2 back pockets, which makes 5 pockets overall. And your 4th pocket for your watch is now your 5th pocket. The lucky 5th pocket we can keep things in. We also see the rise of the Golden Handshake. And 1915, it takes about 7 years. But Cone Mills replaces Amoskeag denim. Amoskeag was the first provider of denim for Levi's and then Cone Mills. We see the first belt loops happen in 1922. Belt loops. Next is the biggest one, the red line salvage denim, which pretty much occurs in the 30s. The red is to designate it as Levi's, the yellow for Wrangler, the green for Lee. Everything with red line is 12-ounce denim. We also jump into the next big iconic thing, probably the most iconic, the red tab. The red tab is the classic feature, big E red tab that starts in 1936 with the jackets right here on the pocket and then moves to the jean the year afterwards. That red tab is everything. That's what I dreamed of as a kid, was having a pair of Levi's with big E. Eventually they did make them, so be patient, guys. Then we see the covered back rivets. This happens in 1937 also, and thus also introduces the flasher. If you buy a new pair of jeans and you know that big orange pink patch above the guarantee tag, and you just rip that off if you bought a new pair of jeans as a kid, that told you originally that the rivets were still there, but they're covered now with denim. The last historic feature to be replaced by a classic thing is the arcuate. The arcuate starts out as a single needle, 2 lines going over and making a wave, almost like a seagull flying in the air. Then you have it replaced by the double needle arcuate, which crosses over and gives you that diamond in the middle. Then we jump into retro features. Retro features are those not historic. They were made in the 80s, 90s when we pretty much could have bought in a pair 10 years ago. And they're not good quality. It's starting to signify the downgrade of quality. Now, in the same sense, we also have to notice that by Levi's downgrading their newer jeans in the 80s, we also led to the idea of collecting vintage. And this whole spawn of collecting old vintage started because these items were being replaced. The first retro feature I can talk about happened in 1954 with the Zinc Buttons. The Zinc Buttons just rattle more than steel buttons. They're not as strong. They won't rust, but they're just cheaper and not as good. Then the paper patch. The paper patch starts in 1955 and goes all the way until 2016 when it was replaced with a faux leather patch on the Levi's Premium. Paper patch is fine. I dig it. It's more environmental. It's less waste. And they're going to fade anyways. The paper patches will rot. They will just if you dry them, if you wash them in a washing machine and dry them, they will crackle. Both will fade. Somehow the ink will keep itself onto a paper patch for longer than it will keep itself onto a leather patch, though. So you do have the dye working on there rather than the material. And then we see the double-sided tab, all the same year, 1955. Both these things are happening. We have the Levi's red tab on the outside and the inside. You can turn it out, you can let it crumple, and you'll still see the wording of Levi's. Then we jump into 1966 and the bar tacks. Bar tacks are the final thing to fix the back of your jean to make them wearable with furniture. You're not going to scratch anything up if you're sitting on it. You don't have a cinch, you don't have exposed rivets in the back, you have no metal in the back, and it's being held up. Then we can see in 1970 they have the tear tag. That's when you have this extra little bit on there that says the size again. You can tear that off. As a kid, when I would get those, I would wait until after one wash. After one wash, it ripped off more easily. When I would rip it off before then, like you would sit and fold it, and then slowly tear off, and it would still end up ripping. One wash, and then you can drip it off, and it's pretty good. Then we have the change from Big E to Small E. This was celebrated with last year's limited edition pair of the golden tickets, and you have gold foil over it. You either get a Big E or a Small E. In 1971, they were making both of them. It's like, hey, we still have some old E tags. Use those until we run out. Whatever you guys have, use. And then by 1972, it's just Small E. And we lived with Small E pretty much the same time as until the paper patch, when the company decided from their premium, just regular jeans, we're going to go back to Big E. Then we get to the saddest point, but also the most important for collecting, which is in 1984. In 1983, they're starting to make a broad, but they're still using some Salvage denim. 1984, you have a pair that's made in Belize, Indonesia, Mexico, just somewhere that's not the US, and they're made with non-salvage denim. Probably not even using cone mills at this point, they're just using whatever weave denim they can have. It's all about the fast fashion. Fast fashion doesn't last. It looks okay at the moment, then it goes away in style, and the thing is, the item won't survive that. It barely survives the style longevity, and now you have an item of trashed clothing that used to last you for a long time. But as soon as they made non-salvage denim in 1984, now people started to notice that, and they wanted to collect everything that was old. And that's when the vintage collecting started. In 1984, they also started doing pre-shrunk. I grew up not being able to buy pre-shrunk when I was a young adult. When I was a kid, they only made pre-shrunk when I started going to high school, and I was about a 28 by 30. So the best I could do was buy 32s and just wash them. Let them shrink till they fit my waist. Now with the LVC, they make under 30 waist. And I think that's really just them noticing that people are skinnier. And the final feature that also happens around the 80s is them not being made in just blues, but also making jeans in fading blues and your blacks and whites, and eventually colors. So these are all the features, and we're going to tell you my opinion on which is the ultimate pair for each category. Before we tell you all about which are the ultimate pairs for each, I want to tell you about some historical anomalies. These only occurred for 1 year to a decade, and they're celebrated in only one pair of Levi's vintage clothing jeans. So the first anomaly we see is the centered patch in a pair of 1880s Nevadas. We don't even know the year that these are made, but in 1873 and through the 1870s, the patch was on the right side. In 1886, the patch is on the In 1933, there was the National Recovery Act, and the 1933s are printed with the NRA tag, which basically said at the time that the federal government, because of the Depression, can come in and declare that they want your jeans back. It was unconstitutional at the time, declared right away, and you can celebrate that. If you have a pair of 1933s, do not cut off that NRA tag. The National Recovery Act tag that's under the leather patch is pretty much what makes that pair of jeans special. And the 1944s, we have painted on arcuate, we have no fifth pocket rivets, we have the loss of the cinch, but you see that happening since. And these three features, though, really make the 1944s the ultimate pair of historical anomalies. Pockets that don't match, painted on arcuate that's sometimes upside down, the missing rivets all over the place. And the last historical anomaly to happen is really the zipper that occurred from 1954 until the early 1962, when it was just called the 511, I believe at that point. 515, 511, 510, 502. They started making other jeans with zippers at that point, with different boxier styles. And that concludes all of these features. I would say, if you're talking about size, that undulates back and forth between boxy and skinny. Although the 501 is particularly a straight leg jean, you will find skinny pairs. Now, my roundup, which ones are the ultimate because they have the most of each feature, I have to say for historic pair, the 1880s Nevadas. You have most of these historical features, if not all of them are historical features in them, plus an anomaly. The ultimate classic pair, the 1947s. This is classic as could be. There's no historical features about it. There's no retro features. Everything in it is made to be the strongest, the 12-ounce red Salvage denim, a Big E tab, a leather patch, and it's just that kind of perfection. And then the perfect retro pair is the 1984s. You can find those in black and white now, the white being pre-shrunk, but you also have that small E, that tariff tag, but only if you buy rigid, and non-salvage. You can also find some 1983s if you still want that salvage with all the retro features. Thanks for watching. This has been another episode of Den and Denim. I'm Dan. Give a like and subscribe. It totally helps out the channel and boosts my self-esteem for a day. I love you all. Keep watching. There's more ahead. Bye.